My mother screamed right in my face, "Start paying the mortgage or get out of our lives." She did it in front of 40 guests at Thanksgiving dinner. My brother-in-law sneered, "Let's watch how well you manage on your own." I gathered my belongings, drove to my own house, and immediately stopped every penny, every favor, every automatic payment I had ever sent their way. Hey, Reddit, Thanksgiving is meant to feel cozy. The aroma of baked turkey, happy voices echoing around the room, glasses touching with soft clinks. For years, I dreamed that other families actually lived that scene. My own memories of the holiday were always tense and noisy. But this year reached a new level. This year, the noise wasn't just background chaos, it was pure public shame. And it began with my mother yelling directly into my face. 40 people crammed the house that evening. Aunts, uncles, cousins, old neighbors, coworkers, random acquaintances my parents wanted to impress. I was carrying a stack of plates to the dining table when Mom spun toward me, eyes blazing, words slicing straight through every conversation in the room. "Pay the mortgage this month or pack your bags and vanish." The whole place froze. Forks hung in the air. A toddler stopped mid-wail. Someone started to cough and instantly swallowed it. I stood there blinking, heat flooding my cheeks. She shouted again, even louder. "You heard me. You think you can keep using this house like a free hotel? Pay up or get out." Except I hadn't lived there in 2 full years. I had my own apartment, my own bills, my own life. I only showed up for holidays because they begged me to. Yet somehow in her version of reality, I had magically turned into the deadbeat son who sponged off them. Whispers rippled. Eyes flicked toward me. Some people smirked behind their hands. Then my brother-in-law, the guy who had wrecked 2 vehicles, walked away from 3 different jobs and maxed out my sister's credit cards, leaned back with a smug grin and announced, "Yeah, let's see how long the baby bird lasts without the nest." A few guests actually laughed. My chest squeezed so tight I could barely breathe, but I forced my voice to stay level. "Mom, what are you talking about? I haven't lived here since 2023. She folded her arms and scoffed. "You come over, don't you? You shower here, you raid the fridge. You treat this place like your personal crash pad. That counts as living here." It was completely unhinged, but she delivered it with such practiced venom that several relatives nodded along like it made perfect sense. I swallowed hard. "I pay my own rent. I pay every bill in my name. You hardly ever get a dime from me for anything." "That's exactly the problem," she snapped. "Your sister and her husband carry this family. You've never contributed half as much as they do." My sister stared at her plate, cheeks red. She knew the truth. For years I had been the invisible ATM, the one who covered overdue notices, who paid for the new roof shingles, who handled Dad's surgery deductible when insurance fell short. I did it quietly, never asking for credit or gratitude. And now they were rewriting the entire story in front of an audience. Something inside me finally broke, not in rage, not even in humiliation, but in cold, clear recognition that the people I had rescued for years would never lift a finger for me. I set the stack of plates down gently, as if the smallest sudden move might shatter more than just porcelain. Dad rubbed his temples and muttered, "Don't make a spectacle. Your mother's under a lot of stress. Just give her what she wants." My brother-in-law chuckled and elbowed my sister. "That's right, cough up or clear out." I took a slow breath, grabbed my jacket from the chair, and spoke the calmest words I've ever said in my life. "Okay," Mom blinked, thrown off. "Okay what?" "Okay," I repeated, sliding my arms into the sleeves. "If I'm such a parasite, if my presence ruins the perfect picture you want everyone to see, I'll remove myself from it." Dad's brow creased. "You're leaving right now? Right now?" I slipped on my shoes, gasps, murmurs. Someone whispered, "Is he actually serious?" Completely serious. Mom rolled her eyes. "Fine, go ahead. See how fast you come crawling back." I paused in the doorway, looked back, and said softly, "You want to find out how I do without you? Let's find out how you do without me." Then I stepped into the icy night air and felt, for the first time in years, something like freedom. Everyone assumed my parents took care of me. Everyone believed I was the dependent child still leaning on Mom and Dad. The truth was the exact opposite. They were the ones leaning hard. I paid their Wi-Fi bill every month. I covered medical copays. I handled the emergency plumber when pipes exploded last winter. I had quietly sent 3 separate mortgage payments when they fell behind. I transferred grocery money like clockwork. Meanwhile, they bragged to friends and neighbors that my sister and her husband were the responsible ones looking after the parents. I stayed quiet about my help because I hated attention. They weaponized that silence and turned me into the villain at their own dinner table. So I made a decision on the drive home. I pulled into my driveway, opened the Notes app on my phone, and wrote one line, cut it all. What they never realized was that I wasn't broke or struggling. 2 years earlier, after a decade of grinding and saving every extra dollar, I had purchased my own house in a peaceful neighborhood. 3 bedrooms, huge backyard, little home office, the works. I kept it secret because every time I achieved something, they twisted it into another reason I owed them more. Now you make good money, help the family. You got lucky, share it. You don't have kids, we do. I learned to hide success to avoid the guilt trips. That night I walked into my real home, heated some leftovers, dropped onto my own couch, and listened to beautiful, perfect silence. No yelling, no demands, no manipulation. Just quiet. The next morning before coffee, I opened my laptop and canceled everything. Autopay for their utilities, monthly grocery transfer, joint, emergency, account mortgage, top-ups, backup credit card my sister used behind my back, the $350, household help. Mom expected every first of the month, every single lifeline. Gone. Then I sent one group text, I will no longer be sending money. Please handle your own finances going forward. 3 minutes later, Mom was calling. I let it ring. 6 minutes later, Dad tried. Ignored. 10 minutes later, my brother-in-law texted, Dude, I think there was a misunderstanding at dinner. Can we talk? Blocked. By noon, my phone was exploding. By nightfall, it had fallen off the counter from vibration alone. 67 unread messages, 31 missed calls, 13 voicemails. They weren't worried about me. They were terrified because their invisible income stream had vanished overnight. The following morning, before the sun was fully up, fists pounded on my front door. Hard, desperate banging, not timid knocks. I opened it to find Mom in the front, mascara tracks down her cheeks. Dad behind her looking pale and frantic. My sister twisting her hands raw, my brother-in-law staring at the ground like the world was ending. Please, Mom blurted the second the door cracked open. We need to talk. I stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind me. The early air was sharp and still. Not out here in the cold, I said. Come in. They filed into my living room like defendants entering court. Dad sank into the couch without meeting my eyes. My sister opened her mouth several times, but no words came. Brother-in-law shifted his weight like the carpet might open up and swallow him. Dad finally spoke, voice shaky. We didn't think you'd actually cut everything off like that. You didn't think I'd stop being your personal bank, I corrected. You assumed I'd keep paying while you kept pretending I was the problem. So tell me what happened yesterday after those transfers stopped. Mom's voice came out paper-thin. The mortgage payment bounced. The bank left a message about a default notice. Late fees piled up. The kids' soccer registration got declined. One of the cars is showing payment overdue. Dad swallowed hard. We panicked. Brother-in-law jumped in, defensive. We tried shuffling money around. We dipped into savings. We were going to replace what you usually send. We just needed a couple weeks. Time you never once asked for, I said. You just took it month after month. He stammered. We were embarrassed to admit we were behind again. Embarrassed enough to humiliate me in front of 40 people instead of picking up the phone? Silence dropped like a curtain. Then Mom did something I never expected. She started sobbing, real, ugly, broken sobs, not for show, but from somewhere deep. I'm sorry, she choked out. We got scared. We liked knowing there was always a cushion. We were too ashamed to admit we had no backup plan. I kept thinking if we pushed you harder, you'd just keep handling it because you love us. It sounded like a little kid bargaining for candy. I did love you enough to handle it, I said quietly, but love isn't an unlimited credit line. Dad's head dropped. We never thought you'd actually pull the plug. Perfect, I replied. Now you'll learn how to live without one. They stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Maybe I had. The old version of me, the one who paid and smoothed everything over, had finally disappeared. Here's what happens next, I said, laying out the terms I'd written down the night before while the house stayed peacefully quiet. A legally binding repayment schedule for everything taken over the years. Full transparency, access to all household accounts. Mandatory budget counseling sessions with a professional I already booked. I would temporarily restore only the absolute essentials, heat, water, kids' school internet on the condition that every single bill gets transferred out of my name immediately. No more auto drafts from my accounts. No more emergency charges. No transfers without written agreement first. They fought it at first. My sister called me heartless. Brother-in-law muttered selfish prick under his breath. Mom begged and cried harder. Dad flip-flopped between guilt and anger. But one by one they realized I wasn't negotiating. I had already called every provider, removed my payment info, placed holds, and transferred responsibility. The paper trail existed. The bank confirmed it. My sister finally wheezed, "You can't force us into financial classes." "You're right," I said. "I can't force you to grow up, but I can refuse to fund you until you at least try." They signed. Not happily, not quickly, not gracefully, but they signed every page. My sister's hand shook as she wrote her name on a document that spelled out, in plain legal language, that she would repay misappropriated money and submit monthly expense reports. After the others shuffled back to the porch, Dad lingered. When the front door clicked shut, he looked at me with tired, defeated eyes. "What do you really want from us?" he asked. I could have unloaded years of resentment. Instead, I answered with the only thing that still mattered. "Honesty," I said, "and for you to stop pretending I'm the problem when I've been the solution." He nodded once, slow and heavy, then walked out. The winter sun was higher now, glinting off the signed papers on my coffee table and off the hood of Dad's car as it pulled away. The weeks that followed weren't movie-style hugs and instant forgiveness. They were spreadsheets, awkward counseling sessions, slow and painful accountability. I sat in a beige community center room while my sister cried and swore she'd pick up extra hours, while Dad admitted he'd hidden behind pride instead of learning to budget, while Mom learned, for the first time in decades, how to actually balance a checkbook. Small changes started showing up. Dad paid one overdue bill from a savings account he finally admitted existed. My sister took weekend shifts at a retail store and started using a budgeting app. My brother-in-law called once, voice small, to apologize and say he was studying for his suspended license test and looking for extra work. But the biggest healing wasn't the money trickling back. It was the way they started looking at me, no longer with automatic expectation, but with something cautious and knew that might, one day, become respect. One evening after another budget meeting, Mom walked me to my car. She reached out and gently took my hand. "I was terrified of looking weak," she whispered. "We taught your sister to be loud because noise hid our fear. We taught you to be quiet because we needed someone to catch us every time we fell. That was wrong." The words hit like a wave, sorrow, anger, forgiveness, and tired pride all mixed together. "Saying sorry isn't enough," I said, pulling my keys from my pocket. "I know," she answered, tears shining. "We'll earn the rest." I drove away that night with my parents' house shrinking in the rearview mirror. Nothing magical had been fixed, but the lies had been ripped away, and for the first time they had chosen the harder path. Work instead of shame, truth instead of pretense. I don't know if they'll always choose right. Old habits die slow and painful deaths. Pride burns hot and long. But in those weeks, they finally spent every ounce of pride they had left and bought something infinitely more valuable with the ashes.